Generous introduction from an exceptional woman who's taken this concept to the world. Thank you very much for having me here today and for involving me in Flexible Workday. The reality is, whether it's tangible or anecdotal, there is a serious concern. And likewise, on the flip side, there's also a fear by employers, or traditionally has been a fear by employers, about the significant fetter on management prerogative that, letting employees roam free would have, that employees would, not perform, that they would have, productivity losses and, all sorts of things. Again, those fears over the years have proved unwarranted, and the benefit of technological advancement has been such that, if anything, we've been able to flip that on its head and demonstrate the benefits. We rewind to 2009, just before the Fair Work Act was introduced and the national employment standards were introduced. We ran a national survey with HR Directors magazine, and I put out to employers online, what were they most concerned about in terms of the proposed national employment standards, because as you may recall, there was about a 6-month period during which the legislation came out and before the commencement of on the 1st of January 2010. They were most concerned about flexible work arrangements, surprisingly so, and remembering that all it was a process. By this stage, we had, formally, we outlined in the article, what the standards were, and there was no just, general reference to flexible work arrangements. It was very specifically outlined what the proposed legislation, or what the legislation was that was going to commence, and they were most concerned about flexible work. I think with women, what we hear a lot of, and what the research suggests, is that they're working part-time but really doing a full-time job. That is obviously a fear that a lot of women have as a result in accessing flexible work. And when looking around the organisation and what you see is women working full-time and getting paid part-time, then obviously the desirability to access that benefit is going to be impacted. There's also that lack of respect for boundaries, and those boundaries are critical, and there's no point having flexible work arrangements if really what you're doing is not respecting those boundaries and driving people to work harder for less. In terms of men, I think they have a legitimate concern in relation to the stigma that is attached. I have seen sort of first-hand evidence of that myself, and there is certainly data that suggests that they're twice as likely than women to have their requests denied, and there's certainly been some adversely affected. Now, the antithesis to fear, of course, is trust, and trust has to be at the foundation of any flexible and agile work arrangement, and certainly it needs to be trust by the employer, of course, that employees are not going to be on a frolic of their own, not working just because they're not under your nose. But from an employee's point of view, there needs to be a trust that if they access those flexible work arrangements, that their employment and their career and their progression and their income will not be adversely affected as a consequence. The improved organisational performance is undeniable in terms of flexible and agile work, or agile working arrangement that is properly taken up, that has the technological foundation, so that it's properly enabled and people can access it. If something isn't working, we also need to have a conversation about that, because there's nothing worse than having to the world and to the employees at large like this glossy brochure or website about all these wonderful things that we're doing, if behind closed doors, the minute something goes wrong, we're undermining that program or compromising the integrity of it, because everybody's whispering about the fact that it doesn't work because in this one of 100 cases, someone dropped the ball or this happened. I went to the launch at the Australian Graduate School of Management of the 2019 Ambition Report. They run it every year, but in terms of, it was earlier this year, but in terms of the incentives that matter, it was very clear that diverse and inclusive workplace cultures are what really matter to women, and more to the point, those flexible work arrangements were 86% of women respondents to this survey indicated that that was something that was significant for them, and it was above mentoring and leadership training programs. And in some ways you can understand that, because if you don't have the system and the structure to enable you to work practically in the workforce, then leadership programs are not going to be very effective or useful for you. The most important data, I think, there is that they're 4 times more likely to stay, so it's about engagement and retention, and they're 19 times more likely to be satisfied with their jobs. So you've got an engaged, happy and productive workforce as a result of having an inclusive culture, and flexibility is a key enabler to that. There are obviously creativity benefits when we're away from the office and we are in deep work, as Cal Newport refers to it. It is akin to a superpower. If you can work uninterrupted, as we do at home when our children are at school, that is much more effective brain power that you're going to be using than you would in an open plan environment. The next generation also don't regard flexibility as a nice to have. It is imperative. They want millennials want the best of both worlds. They're said to want a freelance career, but with full-time stability. So they want to have that flexibility. And the Deloitte Millennial Survey says that they will leave if you don't give it to them, basically. My words, not theirs. We need to role model success, and it needs to be accessed by everyone. We need to make sure that our systems reward flexibility, and that we're not indirectly discriminating or adversely affecting people's progression as a result of accessing that. We need role models to live loudly, and when they are leaving the workplace, men in particular, that they don't say that they have a meeting, that they are legitimately leaving. We talk about the evolution to the new normal. It has to be available for everyone, and it's not just a benefit to the employees that it's available, it's a benefit to obviously the organisations and to our economy. So we need to start and finish with a let's make it work mindset. It is possible.